Hello and welcome to episode 148 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I am your host, the Green Tank Mark, and I am joined, as always, by my co-hosts, my fellow tanks, Kellen the Red Tank.
Hello.
And Neelan the Orange Tank.
Hello.
I wonder if at this point there's like a little pause where people hope for a certain arrangement of the four of us, you know?
I edit these episodes and I listen back to them and I have that hope every time it comes up. I'm like, please, let's be a Mark episode.
You've forgotten when you get to the
That's
edit.
right, exactly. It has been a trying time in the United States of America over the last week, so we're going to make things a little comfortable. We are going to bring back our good old friend BGBOB, and we are going to have a good old BGBOB rankathon of our most comforting games. Games that make us feel comfortable.
But we're going to do that by arguing and screaming at each other.
That's right.
Yes.
That's how we get comfortable. To each their own is what I say. But before we get comfortable, we are going to be talking about the games we've played. Neelan is going to start us off with the much anticipated sequel, or spiritual sequel at the very least, of Stefan Feld's classic Castles of Burgundy in the Castles of Tuscany. I'll follow that up with my play of Cooper Island, and Kellen will round us out with his play of Scout. It's just Scout?
That's right, with an exclamation mark.
Scout!
Try again.
So, Neelan. Okay.
But first, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I just am confused. What color is Tuscany?
It's Tuscan. You ever heard of a Tuscan cantaloupe?
I can't tell if you're joking.
Okay, look up Tuscan cantaloupe and see if I'm lying about it.
I'm not. I don't want to Google that.
Okay.
I have safe filter on. I'm not sure what I'm going to see.
I'm imagining the color of Tuscany as like a Tuscan sunset, almost.
What? What's a Tuscan sunset?
Like
What's a Tuscan cantaloupe?
Yeah,
It's a thing. It's an actual thing, not like a sunset at a random
You're
city.
lying.
Look up Tuscan cantaloupe. It comes up. Look at Tuscan sunset and
it's real. It's a real thing.
Yeah, but so is like a Peoria sunset. Like Tuscan sunset doesn't give it anything.
No. There's something very specific about the sunsets in Tuscany. They're as green as the box cover.
So, Neelan, tell us about the Castles of Tuscany.
Okay, the Castles of Tuscany is one of the newest games from Stefan Feld, and I'm going to explain this as if you know nothing about the Castles of Burgundy, because I could barely remember the Castles of Burgundy when I played it, so this is just as well. In the Castles of Tuscany, you are going to start with 3 little hexagonal boards with different colored hexes spread across them. You're going to start your game by just connecting those together, however you choose, within a variety of different orientations, and then placing a castle on one of the 3 dark green hexes on that board. Now, from here on out, you're only going to be building out your buildings from that castle hex. The way you're going to do this is by playing cards in almost like a Ticket to Ride-esque mechanic, whereby on your turn, you're either going to be drawing cards or using cards. So at the start of the game, you're going to be drawing 2 cards every time you take that action. And until you feel like you have the ability to do something with those cards, that just might be all you do on your turn. When you can use those cards, that would be by playing 2 cards of the same color in order to play a building from your storage area to your player board adjacent to one of your existing buildings. But to do that, you first have to take that building using a 3rd action from a pool of buildings available to everyone. So those are all the 3 things you're going to be able to do on your turn. Take cards, play cards in order to play a building for your board, or take a building from the pool onto your board. Now, each of these buildings, when you place them onto your board, gives you a variety of different benefits. So, for example, there might be a building, in this case it's the yellow building, where as you place it, it's just going to give you a bonus of more cards. There's going to be a building which is going to give you one of a bunch of different upgrades you can choose from, some of which might be to increase your card draw ability, to add more hexes that you can bank on your board before you have to place them into your province, the ability to obtain extra actions which you can later spend. Some of the tiles are going to be for the purposes of gaining points as you place them. And in general, whenever you have an area of like-colored hexes, whether that's 1, 2, or 3 hexes, when you fill that area, you're going to immediately gain points. The twist is that there are 2 types of victory points. So there are these green victory points where at the end of every round of the game, in which there are 3 rounds in total, these are going to be added to your cumulative total of red final victory points. But your green points don't reset to 0 at that point. So let's say I get 10 points at the end of the first round. I now get 10 red permanent victory points. Then I would just keep adding to those 10 green points until I get to 20. At the end of round 2, I'm now adding 20 to my permanent victory points. So the points that you're gaining at the end of every round are just accumulating and accumulating. So there is an increased incentive to get green victory points earlier in the game, so they just continue to pay into your red final victory points at the end of each of the 3 rounds. But the trade-off for that, obviously, is that it's harder to do those sorts of actions earlier on in the game because you haven't built up your ability to do that. You haven't built up your card drawer. So the game of Castles of Tuscany ends up becoming one ultimately of timing. When is the appropriate time to place a building onto your board? Do I just want to fill in a small 1 area zone or 2 area zone? Or do I want to sort of go all out, fill in a 3 area zone early on in order to maximize the green points I'm getting early? On top of this, there's also this race component, because the first person to cover all of the hexes on their board of the same color is going to get a bonus of these green victory points. And the second person to do it gets a slightly reduced bonus. So depending on how you've laid out your boards at the beginning and depending on what colors you're targeting, you might be pushing to, say, cover up all of the green tiles before anyone else does. But is that going to be helping your ability to draw cards? Is that going to be helping your ability to get green points? There are a lot of these small decisions that are sort of almost at odds at each other, depending on the spatial layout of your board. Kellen?
First, I will say, leave it to Mr. Stefan Feld to have 2 victory point tracks. So what is that, a victory point track? What is that, also a victory point track?
Twice the salad.
Yeah.
It's a big salad, as Elaine would say.
The Castles of Tuscany takes away from the Castles of Burgundy the dice being the thing that is limiting what actions you can take, and replaces that with this sort of rummy system. It replaces that, and these are 150 cards of the little baby cards that you get that are kind of annoying to hold and annoying to shuffle and annoying to play with. The Castles of Tuscany takes the yellow buildings from the Castles of Burgundy that have unique powers that affect you permanently, and replaces them with these gray upgrades where, I want to be the guy that when I draw cards, I get to draw 3 cards. Or, I want to be the guy that when I get an extra action stone, I get 2 extra action stones. Or, I want to be the guy that's better at storing tiles on my board. It significantly neuters and reduces the ability for you to have those unique powers, because they're all sort of gridlocked into one of 5 potential upgrades that you can make to your city or your Tuscany, your castle. What does either game have to do with castles? Let me ask you this. Why aren't we talking about that? Neither game has anything to do with castles.
That's true.
Burgundy, Tuscany, sunsets, who can say? The Castles of Tuscany is interesting. I would say Neelan correctly identified the most interesting part, which is the race against tempo. Where I have 11 green points and Neelan only has 6. And so it would be great if I could trigger the end of the round right now. So what happens is Neelan is hurrying to catch up to try to be the one to trigger the end of round while scoring green points, and I'm desperately trying to get to the next round. It happened that we got to a place where I won the game simply by peaking at the right time. Neelan caught up on the green score track, but only after the second round when he missed a round, basically. And I thought that was interesting and created sort of the entire feeling of the game was, oh man, I've got to keep up with everyone on this green track. I've got to balance long-term rewards with what I need to do right now. And so I think in that way it was a success. I actually just played Castles of Burgundy like a week ago online with Christina and a friend of the podcast, Daniel. It is definitely not really the same thing. It's sort of masquerading and pretending like it's in the same genre, but it's not really even close.
Which one do you prefer?
My hands are too large for the cards in Castles of Tuscany. I have very big hands.
That's true.
That's what they always say about me.
First thing I thought of when I met you.
The biggest.
Yeah, that's right. But back to my question.
I thought I was answering. No, yeah. I mean, the Castles of Burgundy is a classic for a reason. Neither of them are my favorite game.
Yeah.
I think that the good news here is you can get in and out relatively quickly. It's not a super long game. It's a very interesting design because it is a lightweight game for gamers, because You try to play this with my mom, and she's like, what the hell did you just do? You know, like, what is going on? There's 9 different types of buildings here, Kellen. Like, what's the difference between light green and dark green and beige? Right. And the answer is, I don't know. We're building castles, Mom. Didn't you read the cover?
I think that's a solid read, and one that we had sort of all said at the end of our game as well, which was exactly that. Like, it was a pleasantly fine game that we all enjoyed, and with the plus side that, yeah, you could teach it to pretty much anyone. Like, is it going to excite someone with a lot more experience in more gamery games? No, I don't think I came away feeling like, man, I need to play the Castles of Tuscany again. But I enjoyed it. Like, it's perfectly pleasant. It's perfectly well honed, but not exciting to me, at least. And which is honestly largely what I felt about Castles of Burgundy, to be honest. At least in my memory of Castles of Burgundy, I remember having the same reaction of, well, that was fine. I don't have any complaints, but
But if you go on Game Nerds, the second bullet, Neil, and it says 2 victory point tracks. So that's kind of turns the Euro people on.
Twice as good, yeah.
Gets the people going. That's not a joke, by the way. Go look it up. Turn off safe search, though, before you do.
I will say that, like, on first blush, I know that this is not necessarily going to be true for everyone, but I think that the premise of changing the dice system to a card system is, at least on the surface, slightly more appealing to me. I don't know that you're any less luck bound. Like, I had turns where I had 7 of the same card in my hand and nothing I can do with those because of the way that the system works. But yeah, it's a hard game to be too frustrated at because of how light and generally pleasant it is.
It was a little just like a quarter of the way through the game, we said, hey, wait a minute, we're playing Rummy. Like, we're playing Ticket to Ride over here in order to place pieces on the board. Like, it's entirely disparate. It's like, here's the Euro game, and now here's the way that we're going to limit your actions. It's so transparent.
Right. And the way that that would manifest, I remembered one specific point of the game where we just did 2 full cycles of drawing cards because we all knew what we wanted to do next, but didn't have the cards to do them. So, yeah, that's the sort of game it is. But I think that will sum up our thoughts on the Castles of Tuscany by Mr. Stefan Felt.
All right, let's move from the castle to the islands, specifically Cooper Island. Cooper Island is a game from Capstone Games, who is a publisher that I have a nice track record with in terms of enjoying all their production.
Well, why don't you marry Capstone Games?
I would if I could. If it was legal, I would definitely do it. No doubt about it.
We've all heard you say this over and over again. I love Capstone Games.
Trying to find the jurisdiction.
I passed them a note. Do you like me? Check yes or no.
And they've yet to check.
Never gotten back to you.
And this is designed by Andreas Odendahl, who goes by Ode, who is the designer of La Granja and I think Solarius Mission, which I haven't played but heard good things about. Anyway, Cooper Island. Cooper Island is a worker placement / tile laying game. But it sort of does both those things, or at least the tiling, I guess, in an interesting way. It also has an interesting take on victory point trackers, which is kind of cool. So picture, if you will, an island. You have an island in front of you, and there's a central island. And a proviso on this before I dive too deep. I played this 2 players. I think people in general think it's fine at 2 players, but I don't know if things change significantly, but keep that in mind when I go over it. So you have an island in front of you, and the tile laying aspect, and you get the tiles that you're going to be placing with some of the worker placement spots on the central board, which is where the workers are placed. But you get tiles and you place them on your own personal island, and they produce resources. So it's a straightforward Euro in that way. But the level of any particular part of your island, so these are a hex-based island, and you can stack multiple, say, mountain tiles on top of each other. And if you get to, say, a 3rd level mountain tile, it produces ore at a level of 3, so that 1 ore on your board represents 3 ore. Okay? So it's sort of interesting in how it does a resource creation. Whenever you have to spend resources, you can spend them directly from your island and get no change back, or you can spend them from your own personal sort of storage, which is on another little player board that you have, sort of a player mat. But the amount of resources that you can store, which includes your resources like the ore and wood and stuff like that, and your money, is very, very, very constricted. So you have something like 6 spots to store your resources, which includes, again, these resources and all the money you want to spend. So it creates a very tight system in that way. So resources are always at a premium. You're never going to have very much of them just because you can't store them, and if you use them from your own island, it's often very inefficient. The worker placement aspect is, and this is interesting because this game is rated like a 4.17 in terms of weight on BGG, and it does not, I mean, maybe in terms of the choices you make, it's very weighty, but in terms of the actual rule set, it's quite sparse in my opinion. Anyway, the central worker placement board only has about 10 spots, maybe less than that. Really, a number of spots are takeoffs on other spots. So there's like a spot where you can either draw a tile from the bag or place a tile, and there's a spot associated with it, which allows you to do both. So it's like a lot of spots are takeoffs on another, so it's not like you have to remember a number of worker placement spots. The only real interaction comes at this worker placement board, and it's not even as strict as an Agricola sort of like, I take a spot, you can't go to it. If somebody takes a spot and you want to go to it, you can place your pawn on top of their pawn, and then you have to pay them a resource. Again, resources are very valuable, so there's some pain in that choice, but you're never really blocked out of anything too severely. And then now the final twist. So I would say the worker placement is nice because of how few the spots are. You don't have to worry about too many crazy things to remember or to do. And the resource management and this whole tile placement thing is interesting in how it converts tile placement to resources. And also the resource management is interesting. But the final thing is, as I was alluding to earlier, the victory point track. So the way the victory point track works is there is water surrounding all the islands. So the water goes around your island, and then around the central island, and then around your opponent's island. And whenever you score points in this game, you can move either your left boat or your right boat, either clockwise or counterclockwise, respectively. And you jump from sandbar to sandbar, tallying your points. And as you're building up your island, you can place these little inlets outside of your own island. And these inlets give you resources. And whenever your score tracker passes one of these inlets, you get a reward. And then as you travel from your island to the central island to your opponent's island, you can go to their inlets and score those rewards. Furthermore, whenever you cross the central island, you get this book that identifies that you've scored 5 victory points, and the book will give you a reward. So at the end of the game, the way you score your victory points on this track is you just count the number of books you have, and that tells you how many times you've gone 5 movements around the board. So there's no numbers on the victory point track, but you use this book as sort of a proxy for, having gone 5 spaces. But it's sort of cool that the victory point tracker is also a way to get more resources. So it is a straightforward Euro. I would say if you're interested in it, don't let the 4+ weight on BGG scare you at all. It's very tight. Maybe artificially so because, again, of this whole thing about having a very, very small stockpile. But it caused our game, a 2-player game was very, very quick, which is another nice aspect of it. But it was my first play, and I didn't know how valuable scoring was. And at the end of a game, I think the final score was something like 18-15. So it's one of those games where if I played it a second time, I would realize how valuable victory points are. And that strikes me as a cool thing about a game. Like just the fact that victory points are really important. I'd be interested to see how it colors my second play of it. Didn't blow my socks off like a lot of other Capstone games do, but a cool game with a lot of unique mechanisms and one that I'm definitely interested in playing again. I think it would appeal to Neelan for the puzzliness. There's a lot of puzzles to consider. The puzzle of how am I going to store my resources as efficiently as possible? How am I going to build my island to get resources? I liked it.
It's definitely one that I've had on my list of must-plays for a while now. Not least of all because of like the aspects you're describing, like the puzzles on puzzles nature, which I've heard a lot of people mention about it. But I also just think it looks cool. Like for whatever reason,
very, very cool.
Whenever I look at pictures of it, I just think it has such a cool. I mean, it's not like the most aesthetically striking in terms of like art style or anything like that, but just the idea of these islands are connected to the central board and like you having, I guess they're wooden pieces like there are buildings and ships and things. It has a cool feel to it.
It is really cool to put the board together depending on the player count because they have these like pieces that interlock. And I don't know, this is really dumb. But I'm a sucker for like jigsaw pieces that are not like just squares. They're like, curves and stuff like that. And there's a whole bunch of these. And they like, when they lock together, you can do it for a 4-player and have 4 islands or 3-player with 3 islands or 2 with 2. And it's just like they lock in a very satisfying way. So, and it looks cool. And it's cool to like go to your opponent's island and work off of his infrastructure.
Is there any player interaction?
Just in the pay your opponent a resource when you go on their spot. I mean, it's not a highly interactive game. It is just not. So that is Cooper Island from Capstone Games. Kellen, tell us about Scout. Or sorry, Scout.
We are here to talk about a Japanese card game.
Surprise, surprise.
Can it get any better? This game is Scout. It comes to us from One More Game! Exclamation mark.
I like that name. That's cool.
So I actually don't know much about the origins of Scout, but it is essentially a variant or a different version of Crass Carrier, or Delt, as they're now calling it in America. Crass Carrier, if you recall, and I'm sure I'm butchering that. Actually, I think people even wrote in and told us we were butchering that. Is actually a really, really fantastic card game. Crass Carrier and in Scout, you draw a hand of cards, and you are not allowed to change the order of them in your hand. So you're trying to find pairs and straights in your hand by playing other cards in a way that allows other cards to come closer together. In Crass Carrier, there is only one loser, and you're sort of trying to bomb each other, and when you pass in a round, you have to pick up one of your sort of shield cards that's keeping you in the game, and there's only one loser. In Scout, what happens is you have 3 different action options. You can play, you can scout, or you can play and scout once per round. And so when you play, you lay out 2, 3, 4. And then Christina's turn, she has to beat that 2, 3, 4. If she can't, the game is over. She loses the round. The round is over, and I have won, and we score points. But she is allowed to scout, which means she's allowed to take cards from either end of my 2, 3, 4, and then put them anywhere she wants in her hand, which is leveling up the combos that she has in her hand. And then Neelan gets to go. And suddenly, Neelan only has to beat 2, 3 because Christina stole the 4 and put it in her hand to make better hands. And then Neelan, it's pretty easy to beat a 2, 3 because he can beat it with a 3, 4, or 3 of any kind, or 3 of a run, or 4 of any kind. This continues until a round ends by someone getting rid of all their cards or someone not being able to play. But everyone has that cool chip card, that cool chip that says play and scout, or scout and play, I guess is how you would do this, which would be take a card from another combo on the table, put it into your hand, and then play. And so a lot of the game is around the tempo of when to use that chip to try to hope that you make something that can't be beaten by anyone else at the table. Round ends, and then you score. The only other interesting wrinkle about Scout is that the cards have 2 numbers on them, one on each corner, so top left, bottom right. And when you pick up a card, when you scout, you actually can flip it over and use it in any layout that you want. This is really clever and cute because it also gives you an opportunity to mulligan at the beginning of a round. You get your whole hand of 9, 11, 12 cards, and you can flip them all over if you want to. But if you flip one, you have to flip them all, which is kind of a funny process of just sort of pull them out, push them back, flip them over, go back out, because you can't change the order of the cards. That is sort of the primary hero rule. Neelan, what did you think of Scout?
I remember that this took like a little bit of like a warming up in the beginning where we weren't quite sure we were getting what was good about it. And then you have one round where someone puts in their chip and does the scout and play, and you're like, oh, okay, well, if I do this at this critical point, then I can pull this and play just when I thought we had lost. And then the round progresses. And then someone plays 4 of a kind or something, and you're like, well, that seems dumb. How's that going to be beatable? Then someone scouts it to knock it down, and then someone overcomes it. And that's the kind of the momentum of this game. It's like, big play, knock it down a little bit, someone can beat it. And by virtue of having that additional little scout and play chip, there's an extra little tinge of like once per round special power where you can get 2 scouts in a play before it gets back to the first player in a 3-player game. But that feels like punishing to use because now you know you don't have that get out of jail free at any given time. I liked that momentum of a lot of feeling like you could have big splashy plays, but they weren't just the be all end all of the round. And in actuality, the way to win this is to set yourself up for enough maybe medium-sized plays that you just overcome everyone's ability to counteract you. And if you're doing that better than anyone else is because other people are looking at their hands and they get down to 4 and 5 and they're like, well, I got no good combinations here anymore, then they're effectively out of the round. And that's the kind of the thing you're sort of trying to build yourself towards avoiding. I thought it was really, really cool. I think it had more going for it than met the eye initially, but still in a very simple, we could just play this all night, very cozy fashion, you know?
Yeah. The cards are made of like weird thin plastic, which is weird. You never know what you're going to get when you just order from Japan. I ordered this from Amazon Japan, and it's very good. It's very good. I like it a lot. I think Crass Carrier or It will be in my top 50 games of all time. Spoiler alert. The question does remain for me, which one is superior? In Scout, you're ultimately looking for one winner. In Crass Carrier, you're trying to get to one loser. Our group has a propensity to like the getting to one loser because whenever someone is close to being the loser, everyone else tries to make them the loser. There's a strong gang up on the loser factor going on at Board Game Barrage headquarters. But I think Scout might be strategically better or more sound overall with a little bit less of the high highs. That is my hot take. I am very excited to own Scout. I'm happy to have it. I think it's very good, very intriguing. And I love seeing little tweaks on traditional card designs that just open it up to something that you would have never expected. Definitely one that is coming home for the holidays with Callan Allen. That is Scout, ! By One More Game, !
So before we get comfy and cozy, another call out for reviews. You might figure out why we need reviews when I read this one to you. Here we go. So 3 weeks into my summer job, there's a little clue for you there that it's been a long time, and I am 18 podcasts in and loving it. I found you guys on YouTube with the top 50 board games that you each chose and was just hooked from there. Each of you guys have well-educated opinions and enjoyable personalities that make the podcast super fun to listen to. I feel like I'm learning a lot about games, as well as myself, honestly. Now, that is a recommendation. He's learning about himself. Goodness, we're doing our jobs, folks. Though hearing multiple views on not only games, but on different social circumstances as well, I walk away from each podcast with some piece of info that is interesting to ponder on. I am excited to listen to all the podcasts. Thanks for making them. Also, thanks for making me more broke than I was, LOL. That is from John Boy Fred. 3 weeks into his summer job. John Boy Fred, go to our Discord if you're not there already and tell us how the summer job wrapped up. And for anybody else who is not John Boy Fred, give us a review. Go to wherever you found us, either Apple Podcasts or Facebook or wherever you found us, and why not review the episode and tell us, what your current employment situation is. No, you don't have to do that. But yeah, leave a review. Let us know what you're doing and let us know what you think, especially if you think that we're a 5-star. That would be the best way to think. All right, here we are. Who's at the door? It's BGBBOB.
BGBBOB.
That's right, everyone's favorite friend. And we are going to be doing a BGBBOB rank off using the Pub Meeple system. And we are going to be debating our most comforting games. For those who aren't aware of this, Pub Meeple is a website where you can put a list of anything you want, and you'll get a side-by-side ranking of things on that list, and then at the end, it'll spit out a ranked list. So we're going to do that. We each contributed 4 games to this list, and we are going to be arguing about them, and at the end, we'll have a ranked list of Board Game Barrage's official most comforting games. But before we go into the list, let's talk about our criteria. Neelan, what went into selecting these games for you?
I had a lot of back and forth over a couple of things. Like, in my head, when I first thought about this, the one game that I kept coming back to was something like Magic the Gathering, which at various points in my life, it just feels like a comfortable, warm pair of slippers, Like, every time I've gone back to Magic the Gathering, it's familiar, it hasn't changed, takes me back to high school. But the concept of, like, trying to sell people on a high investment, high in terms of time and price game as, like, a comfort game to anyone but me felt absurd. I kind of went for games that would just be easy to recommend to people as just like very mellow, sort of pleasant. You can return to it any time, and it's always going to feel great,
Yep, I do. I'm with you. Kellen, what went to your list?
I wish you would have put Magic the Gathering in so that we could award you last place.
I'm not going to lie. At
12
least
of
partly
12.
why I didn't submit it, because I knew it wasn't going to stand on the list.
I think that there's an important distinction from filler games, which is another list that we did. And without being specific, in case one of you idiots decided to put one of these on the list, which I don't know at this point, if a game has too much tension, I think it disqualifies itself from this list. So a filler game length that has high tension would not make my list of comfort games. I think about games like Scout, like we just talked about, where you are playing the game, but you are also enjoying each other's company and sort of just passing the time. Cribbage would be good if cribbage was worth playing, which it's not. I'm sure I just angered a lot of people.
This was a very, very, very hard list for me to make because I went with, as you guys have sort of mentioned, games that don't elicit a feeling of tension. And for me, that's like part of the reason I play games is to like compete, and I always feel some level of tension. So I went through the list of the games I played, and I had a real hard time. I was just trying to like imagine myself playing the game and what level of tension I'd be feeling, trying to find games where I felt like no anxiety or no like tension, and it was super hard. So this was really difficult for me. I came up with the games that I felt the least amount of tension. That was the number one thing, and sort of ease of teach, ease of play. That was another consideration. And a special shout out to two members of our Discord, Luminous and Special Ops, who came up with the idea for this topic of emotive games, and specifically this topic, games that elicit a comfort feeling or comfortable games. So thanks to those folks, and if you want to suggest topics of your own, we are receptive to it. So just go to boardgamebarrage.com/Discord and let us know what we should be talking about, because we will talk about it. But without further ado, let's start the ranking. All right, the first matchup is Dominion versus Lost Cities. Dominion was, I think, a Kellen choice, and Lost Cities what came from me. So, Kellen, do you want to stand up for Dominion?
Dominion is a very easy-to-play deck-building game that many people ascribe as sort of their re-entry into the modern hobby of board gaming. In Dominion, you choose 10 of 25 kingdom cards in the base set, and then you play a game that has a lot of process to it. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to a game of Dominion that feels very familiar to someone who plays a lot of Dominion. You have your opening hand, and then the second hand, and the way that the copper falls in your hand brings a certain sense of nostalgia to me to say, oh, which kingdom cards are in the set? I think you could make the argument that if you have too many curse cards in the game, if you have too many cards like the pirate ship from Seaside, that it suddenly becomes not so much a comfort game, it becomes an attacky game. But I think for the most part, Dominion limits you, it puts you in rails. Everyone is doing this formulaic process of drawing cards, buying things, putting them in their discard pile, shuffling all of their cards together, and redoing that process in a way that makes Dominion very, very comforting and comfortable to me.
So, I'm going to admit right up front, this game sort of breaks my rule because I just had such a hard time finding games that elicited no anxiety for me. But Lost Cities is a two-player card game from the Dr. Knizia, in which you are battling over 5 different suits of cards. On your turn, you are playing cards either to a discard pile or to your own pile, trying to amass the highest score. The thing that makes this game interesting is that if you start a score pile of any one color, you are committing to scoring that color, and you start at a -20. So you have to make sure that if you go in for a color, that you're going to hit at least 20 points or it's going to be a negative. Furthermore, before you can play any point value cards to a pile, you must choose whether or not you commit to a multiplier. So before you even start putting these points down to get to 20, you can place a multiplier that will either double or triple your score depending on how many multipliers you place. And therefore, if you don't get to 20 and you've committed multipliers to it, you could potentially be getting a lot of negative points. Another fun twist to this is that the discard pile is a communal one. So whenever you discard a card to a pile, your opponent can, for their draw action, pick that card up. So tension to it. There is. I'm being honest about it. The thing that makes this a comfort game to me is the ease of teaching it and the quickness of play once both players know it. There's not much of a learning curve, at least to getting your feet wet and knowing how to play it. I've taught this to a number of people who are not gamers, and they understand it fairly quickly. And, we can get to playing a number of games of it, one after the other. There's a rhythm to it. There's a cadence to it that is comfortable to me. Even though I do feel tension, like I do want, it's a game that evokes it. It does. But it's just, playing with somebody else who can get to the point of knowing the game fairly quickly and then just going boom, 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 back and forth, back and forth.
I agree with you. I hadn't even considered the tension side of Lost Cities, but this was close to being a game I submitted just because it is that sort of comfortable card game that you can play multiple times in quick succession even. That said, I think Dominion was on the list I submitted, but was probably beaten out by Kellen's. So Dominion is easily my choice for this matchup. I had to have a deck builder in my submissions, and Dominion is my favorite one. Dominion is a game that I came to earlier in the hobby, and I keep returning to it as a very pleasant. The rhythm of the game that Kellen described, of deck builders in general, where it's draw, play, discard, is so comfortable. So I think it's going to be Dominion fire away for me.
Oh, yeah. But before we go on, I forgot the fire away rule. That's the cardinal rule of this BGBBOB. If you say fire away, your vote is locked in and you cannot go back. So fire away is a locked in vote.
And you can't speak again until the next one.
That's right.
That was a rule, right?
That was a rule. That was a rule we added in the congressional subcommittee. Dominion is a game that I came to late, so by the time I got to Dominion, people were really good at it, so I never really got that comfortable feeling because I was always playing with players who were much better at it. So it's hard for me to make a judgment on this. So I'm going to vote for Lost Cities, but I know Kellen is not.
So Lost Cities for me fails the criteria because of how much math you have to do at the end of it. I think the end of round is like quite annoying because you're multiplying by 2, 3, or 4, and there's negatives and positives, I believe, that are involved in that math equation. And then you're doing like quite a bit of annoying math. I think Lost Cities has been surpassed by more modern designs in the exact same type of thing. And I also think it feels bad when you're like, which card should I discard that they don't want? And then you discard one and the other person goes, gotcha. That's the one I wanted, and picks it back up. Like, I like Lost Cities. I think it's great. I made my own set out of old Magic cards, actually, for what it's worth, like 10 years ago or some ridiculous amount of time ago. I'm not old. Fire away, Dominion.
I'll disagree with you about the math. I will agree with you about the tension, but my vote for Lost Cities doesn't matter because Dominion wins.
Did you already fire away?
I fired
violating the subcommittee rules.
All right, here we go. The next one, Telestrations versus Patchwork. I think this is a Nealon versus Nealon special.
Okay, so...
Nealon, argue against yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So very quickly, I think polyominoes in particular are such a satisfying type of puzzle game to me. And Patchwork, I think, exemplifies this because there's very little to the game except the polyomino puzzle and kind of like the fun little time element to it. This also being a two-player game just sort of feels like that adds a little bit of an element of intimacy to this that I just like about it. And the aesthetic also is just super adorable. This is a game that reminds me of times I played it with my mother, for example, like, which is not very many games in the modern board game era. It's that simple and it's that satisfying. Telestrations, to me, is sort of like the epitome of comfort. Like, I think one of the things I return to every single time that we do our top 50 lists at the end of the year is, I believe it's Kellen who mentions this game, and I just think to myself, that should be on my list too, because it's just such a fun, rewarding game. And my memories of playing Telestrations are all like sitting back on a couch, like everyone's just sort of slouched back with their pad in hand, making silly pictures, passing them around. You're just laughing. You're trying to sort of one up people in terms of like the artsmanship on each card. And it's a fun, goofy time that anyone could enjoy. You know, young gamers, non-gamers, family members, everyone. It just has a very familial sort of playing and laughing around with friends feeling to it. Of these two, I'm going to give the edge personally to Patchwork. I'm going to fire that away, I think. Fire away on Patchwork.
I think these are close for me. I'm going to go Telestrations because I don't think I've ever felt any tension with Telestrations, and Patchwork is still a competitive game, so just the competitive versus like communal party game-ness of Telestrations gives the lean to Telestrations to me. Fire away.
I would pay whoever publishes Patchwork $200 on the back of the box to put this quote from Nealon: Patchwork is intimate. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Nealon of Board Game Barrage. And then the second sentence would be, I play it with my mother. So there'd be a ... in between those two.
It's like being wrapped up in a warm quilt with your mother. What's wrong with that?
Patchwork has a Christmas edition that is supposed to be coming out soon. And an Americana edition. Patchwork is a quintessential comfort game. Modern, obviously very new. For me, there's something about mirth and laughter that don't fit into the comfort category. So I actually specifically avoided games that were humorous. I think that I'm funnier than I am, and actually panic a little in Telestrations to try to sort of, there's a performative element in Telestrations. For me personally, Patchwork, fire away.
Patchwork it is. Okay, this is the game versus Wizard.
So Wizard is a classic trick-taking game. Many people are talking about this game and calling it Skull King, but it's Wizard. You're playing Wizard, and Wizard came out before Skull King, so let's give credit where credit is due. It's Wizard. In a game of Wizard, you run up and down, so you start the first round and you play one hand, then you play two hands, then you play three hands, or you're skipping around probably because you don't want to play a full game. And then, you get to some maximum amount. You play 7 hands, then 6 hands, then 5, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. You are trying to figure out and call how many hands that you think you can win based on the cards that you have in your hand. But the version that I like to play is that you can't have an equal amount of bids. So if there are 4 hands and 4 players, everyone can't bid 1. It has to actually be off. So if player 1, player 2, and player 3 bid 1, that last player has to bid something that makes it unequal, which is the excellence of Wizard. Trick-taking games, I think, fit into this category so incredibly well. What's the trump suit? Even using and reusing these classic ideas like trump and suits and tricks really helps set a framework for something that is comforting for many people who've played these type of games since they were children. Wizard is classic, and the first game that I immediately came to my head when the topic was suggested.
The game is a cooperative game where there is a communal pile of cards that you are trying to get through. That is your winning state for the table. And there's limited communication, but you're basically trying to play all your cards to 4 piles. So the piles either go from 1 to 100 or 100 to 1. So everybody has a unique numeric card, and it's a situation where, you have an 86 in your hand, and there's only maybe one pile where you can play it, and you're trying to convince the people at the table, or you are convincing the people at the table that they cannot play on this certain pile because this is the only place where you can play your 86th. And they're telling you, well, I have to play there because I can't play anywhere else. Again, this is a game where there is some tension, I will admit to it. But for me, it's relieved by the fact that it's a relatively fast game. It's not the fastest game in the world, but it's relatively fast. Again, it's also simple to teach and play, but also, most importantly, the fact that it's a cooperative game. So even if you lose as a group, so it doesn't really super matter. Obviously it's more fun to win, but you're doing it together, so the competitive edge isn't there. And it's a game that I often play laughing. It's not a game where I'm feeling stressed necessarily because I want to win or any level of anxiety. It's just a fun, we're joking about how badly you cannot play in this pile sort of game. So I will go with my choice, the game. Fire away.
I think that description of it being a co-op game dissolving the tension is exactly right. And I was struggling to find a co-op game that I thought would be good on this list. And actually, if I had thought of the game, that probably would have been exactly it. Because it has that familiarity of we're playing cards, right? Which is the sort of thing that was the genesis of this idea. But it being a cooperative game just has that little bit of a, we're all in this together, we're going to win or lose together. I am not a huge one for trick-taking games, although I think that Wizard is probably the right sort of we could play this all night game in that ballpark. But for me, it is going to be the game. Fire away.
I honestly think that's what hurts to Wizard, Kellen, is the fact that I think you and your family or you and your friends have played this a bunch, and I don't have anywhere near the familiarity with it, so it wouldn't strike me as a game where I could just sit down and play it, and I can totally see how it is for you. But yeah, that's why it wasn't something that struck me as a game that I would select for this list.
My pushback is the success of skulking in the modern era. Alongside, I made a Pokemon retheme of this for my younger brother who took it to college and became a huge staple. I think he's actually now played it more than I have. But, the game is fantastic and works perfectly for this list. And I understand that Neelan did not have as good of a childhood as I did, so that's fine.
Okay, the game it is. We are being very mellow in this argument. It's a comfortable argument. It's a comfortable list.
We're all just comfortable list. Taking it chill, got our slippers on, by the fireside.
Right. Next up in the battle is San Juan versus Coloretto. I know you both did Coloretto, so Neelan will do that because San Juan, I know, was on Kellen's list.
Yeah, so Coloretto is actually the highest thing I submitted. It is the card game that I sort of came to as we could just break this out. It's a small box. We could take it with us anywhere, break it out any time, play it just on a pile on the floor as we're sitting on the floor. You could break it out almost anywhere, explain the rules in 5 minutes and be having a great time and want to just keep play it over and over again. This was a lot of my experience when I took it home for the holidays and was able just to play it repeatedly with family members and friends in a bunch of different situations. It has a little bit of, not exactly tension's not the right word, but it has a little bit of that press your luck, a component to it where you kind of feel how far do I want to push myself? And when it doesn't work out, it's funny. It doesn't feel punitive. It just feels like a communally fun experience in a very, very simple rule set that I played for hours at a time.
San Juan is a amazing card game that packs a lot into a little box, and it's just enough. I think about a game like the Castles of Tuscany, and I just think for how little the game is, there's certainly a lot of rules. And San Juan has that same level of game, but with such a small rule set, with such a small box. San Juan is very comforting to me And I think that it will work for many gamers. You know, it was born out of being a card game version of Puerto Rico, but I can't emphasize enough how approachable San Juan is and how the box itself is, I think it's 2 Colorettos big. But comparing Coloretto and San Juan is such like a fool's errand. Coloretto is a simple card game, and San Juan is attempting to be like a deep Euro game with a very, very slimmed down rule set and box. I think San Juan... The funny thing about this comparison specifically is I think that Coloretto is more comforting, but for most players, I would think they would actually prefer to play San Juan, but I will fire away for Coloretto here.
I will also fire away for Coloretto, but I will say I think San Juan is a great inclusion in this list. It is, like Kellen said, for me, like just the right level of complexity without going from comfort to like more than that. And the way that everything is sort of like works in itself. There's no extra currency. There's the currency is the cards that you're playing that you're also using to build. Everything is sort of like self-contained in a really nice way. But I'll go Coloretto.
Coloretto, fire away.
Next up is a battle of the Kellen choices. Dominion versus Scrabble.
All right, so if I have to introduce Scrabble, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast. No, just kidding. Scrabble is a word game beloved by millions, but actually it's an area control game. But actually, shut the up. Scrabble is a game that everyone plays with their families, where you have a set of 7 tiles, and you're spelling words on the board. You're trying to cover up double letter score and triple letter score and double word score. I think that this game inclusion on my list is in part nostalgia, but also really if I wanted to sit down with anyone and pull out Scrabble, you can have full-on conversations while you're playing Scrabble. One person is taking their turn, they're looking at their thing, they're trying to spell and respell, and how do you spell that word? Scrabble is a fantastic, comforting game. It may not hold up to all the modern mechanisms of today, but if you like making words and you're not playing with tryhards who own a Scrabble dictionary and know all 32-letter words, including XI, QAT, and AA, which is the most garbage thing that you could possibly do, Scrabble is very comforting.
I am super torn here because I have, again, not played very much Dominion, and I am completely cutthroat when it comes to Scrabble. Every time I play Scrabble, I'm super anxious and super tense. So I'm picking between a game that I'm not familiar with and a game that I'm super tense about. I will say that I consider Scrabble a hand management game. But
actually, you forgot the actually.
I forgot the actually, you're right. I'm going to go with Dominion just because Scrabble is too anxiety ridden for me.
I'm actually shocked I didn't think of Scrabble. Like, Scrabble is a game I played so much growing up. It is a game I would return and have returned comfortably to in like the Words with Friends variants and stuff like that. It's a game that I play with family members. It's a game that reminds me of just sitting on the floor playing it with family. It's a game I still love and honestly could make my top 50 list if I were to think about it for more than a little bit. Scrabble, fire away.
All right. Here we go. Neelan's Patchwork versus my new game to this list, Sushi Go. Neelan's described Patchwork, so I'll go over Sushi Go. Sushi Go is, for me, the smoothest card drafting game there is, basically. Sushi Go is a game that I have taught to non-gamers, like a group of non-gamers, and we have just played game after game after game after game in this game. There's enough different ways to score that it's sort of interesting. There's some thought as to what you're drafting. The art is really, really cute. Sushi is a very fun theme, but the play is just so smooth, and you're not going to be like overly strategic when it comes to Sushi Go. Like when you're playing Sushi Go, you understand that your chances of winning are based on a lot of things that are out of your control, but it's just so fun. It's a game for me that is like the prototypical play and talk game, play and chat sort of game. For me, Sushi Go was one of the highest selections on this list, and I'm going to fire away with Sushi Go.
I have a question about the rules, Mark.
Yes.
Is the presupposition that these are all good games? Does a game have to be good to qualify for this list?
Yes.
Patchwork, fire away.
Wow. I think that if I were to... I think Sushi Go is a very good choice for this list. I think that the one knock I would have against it is oftentimes when I play with people, I feel like I like it more than the people I've played it with. It's never really gone over very well, for whatever reason, with a lot of people I've tried to play it with. They've always just been like, that was fun. And then that's what we think about it. Whereas I just can't help but return to Patchwork as just the comforting feeling of getting the perfect tile and getting into the perfect spot, for me at least.
It has a Christmas edition, Mark.
I will say that, like, I don't think I have ever, and I don't think I would ever play Sushi Go with, like, quote-unquote gamers, because when I'm in a gaming environment, like with people who are into board games, it just, for me, it's like competitive. It's like, that's why I'm there. And so I will really only play Sushi Go with people who are not really into board games to the degree I am, or a lot of my friends are. So Sushi Go was like such a auto selection for me because I just don't feel that tension playing it. That was like one of the few games where I'm like, okay, this is definitely a game on this list because I just do not feel
Right. It's the ultimate sort of just like zone out and chill and just the game almost like melts away. Yeah, I get that completely.
Yeah. But Patchwork
is
I think Sushi Go, the function of passing cards to each other and then someone getting 1 or 2 cards behind everyone else and then having to catch up sort of negates. That happens all the time, every time.
I have never played with people who are like, oh, I'm one behind in this, where it's like a through line in the entire game. Like, nobody really cares. Like, oh, I'm losing like on the pudding. It's like a side part of like the game where it's mostly about the conversation and the communal nature of like sharing cards. There's like here's mine, pass. I picked one, pass. A joke about, oh, you took all the good ones, or oh, you gave me all the garbage. Like, the game, again, as like Sir Nealon said, just becomes part of the backdrop more than like the main event. But Patchwork it is. Next up, Sushi Go versus Telestrations. All right, we've covered both of these games. These both, according to my metric, like both of these games, I don't really feel any tension in either of them. For me, I'm picking Sushi Go on this because Sushi Go just is more of a game for me than Telestrations. So just on that criteria alone, I'm going to pick Sushi Go. Fire away.
I think Telestrations being less of a game is in some ways... It's funny, on one thing I could see how whether that might disqualify it from the list, but to me it kind of like fits into the thing we were talking about with Sushi Go, where it's just the thing you're doing while you're joking and having fun. For me, like, Telestrations just always feels like just the epitomal, like, sit back in your chair, we're drawing now for the next 20 minutes, you know? So I think this is still Telestrations for me.
I'll say this is like absolutely splitting hairs, and I copped to that immediately, but there is some tension, a little bit of anxiety, maybe not tension is the right word, to the drawing. I mean, some people do not feel comfortable like with their drawing ability, even though drawing badly, it makes the game even better, but there is that touch of that there.
I can see that, and I actually hadn't thought of that until Kellen mentioned it, where like you might think like, oh, if someone doesn't pick up what this is, that is going to reflect badly on me. Yeah, I get that, actually.
My strategy in Telestrations is to screw up the drawing in a way that I can argue wasn't intentional, even though it was intentional. So I'm revealing that here now for the first time. That's an exclusive. What was the title of the list, Mark, again? Top
Comforting.
What?
Comforting games. What is your joke now? Go ahead.
Sushi Go, fire away.
Perfect. Love it. I agree with you completely on everything you've ever said. Okay, so we have a new addition to the list. We've got the game versus a game that I am not familiar with. Oh, wait, it's Biblios. Okay. I love Biblios. I feel great playing Biblios. It makes me feel happy. I feel very comfortable whenever I play it. Yes, there are decisions to be made. Yes, there is some anxiety there, and there is some tension there. Yes, I cop to it. But 2 things. 1, I love it. Makes me feel happy. This is about a list about making you feel happy. And 2, for my choice, my philosophy is when in doubt, Biblios. Biblios for me, fire
There's
away.
a lot of tension in Biblios. It's an auction game.
There is tension, but it's like Kellen's Wizard. Like, look at my face now. This is not for the podcast, but I feel so good when I play Biblios. It makes me feel happy. It makes me feel comfortable and happy and warm.
What was the other
I don't
option?
care if it finishes dead last. The one you're going to vote for, the game, I guess.
The game, fire away.
Kellen, save me here. Alliance.
Oh, I won't be saving you. I think that this is an interesting selection, and I think that, you know, if we run back the tape on how you've described Sushi Go, that's how I feel about Biblios. There's nothing there. It's a trifling. It doesn't matter what you do.
God.
You just pass the cards around the
You
table.
can vote against it, but don't
It's a
lie.
communal.
Don't lie about it. Just vote
Fire
against
away
it.
the game.
Okay. Oh, here you go. Here's a battle. Biblios versus Wizard. Nealon, do it.
Oh,
Come on.
This is the worst pairing for me to adjudicate.
Vote.
Well, I know, but think about it. Vote with your.
the
Oh
people.
no!
Don't
Yes, vote with the people.
vote with what
Vote with
Here's
your
the
mind
thing,
and
the
your
problem
heart.
is, Kellen, is
Hope
I
the
actually
world
like
to have.
Biblios a lot. Like, it was
Do
on
it.
my
Just do
top
it.
50 last year.
Yeah, but it's not
I
comforting
think
at
you're
all.
right, but I also
It
don't
work.
know that Wizard is. Like, feeling like you're not going to get the tricks that you need, or like, I've bid 3, but I don't
What
think I'm
suit
going
are
to
we
get
in?
it. They're both
Yeah,
kind
what
of
did I have?
tense.
5. and
What
then
suit are we in? What are you?
I had 5. Am I going to hit 5? How am I going to play to hit 5? Come on.
I
Neil.
Oh
think it's
my
Bib-
God.
I
Do
think
it. It's okay.
Biblios. I think it's Biblios.
All right. Just say fire away.
Okay,
All we need to hear is say
but
fire
Mark,
away.
but he's doing that because you don't like Wizard. I think you're breaking the rules of the game,
What?
and we have to stop the show.
Oh
Because
my
I
God.
don't like
Neil, just say
Wizard.
fire away and we can move on.
No, yeah, because you have to vote
Neil,
for it.
No,
It's more
I
comforting.
acknowledge that Wizard was in the ballpark of a game that I think is a great choice for this. But I think Wizard specifically is not the one I would have picked because of the tension of the bidding. I think it's
And Biblios is an
words.
auction game.
But I like
2 words to end this. 2 words
All he
to end
talks
this
about
pain.
is the delicious tension of Biblios.
Neil,
What,
look
did
at
he
my
make
face
it
when I
all
think
up?
of Biblios.
Biblios.
Neil,
Fire
okay.
away.
Boom. Done. Suck it, Kellen. Okay.
I don't think I can continue.
New addition to the list, we have Coloretto versus Splendor.
Splendor is something that we have a collective love for here on the podcast. The joke is, can you find a Splendor killer? You cannot. You have not found it yet. In Splendor, you are going through a process, and I think that a lot of the comfort games has a very similar turn structure to me, where you're sort of slowly building towards something, and you're picking up gems, and most turns are, well, am I going to pick up 2 of the same gem or 3 of different gems? And then once you get a level 1 card, from now on you've got a free ruby, and that's a fun feeling, and then I've got 2 rubies. I got a ruby and a diamond. Suddenly I'm looking at the level 2 cards. There's a very clear structure and process to a game of Splendor. There is just enough interaction in a game of Splendor to make it actually good, because we're presupposing that these games are actually good in addition to being comforting. Splendor also works for both gamers and non-gamers. I've actually had success teaching this to members of Christina's family who don't play other games. The theme is inoffensive as long as you don't get the Marvel one. That is offensive. Splendor is a great game for this list. It is a comforting game. It has a nice production. You know what you're getting into when you open Splendor, and you have a pretty consistent experience no matter what.
This is a tough call for me because I feel tension playing both these games, although I do enjoy both of them.
Is your whole life full of tension?
It is
Mark?
full of tension. I
Talk to
thrive
someone
on it. I
about
live
that.
on
this
it.
is the
I live
problem
on
with being as
competition.
competitive as Mark is.
That's right. I think what edges it out for Coloretto for me is the quickness of play, just playing cards, boom, 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 boom. Splendor, there's a little bit of setup, and it feels like a little more intricate, even though it's not really. I mean, we're, again, splitting hairs here, but I think Coloretto edges it out for me in this list.
I definitely think setup time is something that we have not covered yet, but it's definitely relevant to this conversation and separates a game like San Juan from a game like Castles of Tuscany, where one wouldn't even be potentially included on the list, and one is a good example. So I respect you, Mark, in this specific
Thank God, finally.
choice.
Splendor is an excellent addition to this list, and one that was one I had submitted as well. Yeah, we always talk about Splendor as being like the simplicity champion in terms of if you're trying to come at Splendor, you can't be doing Splendor but more things, because Splendor is so good as
Don't
is.
you dare
yeah,
miss.
exactly. If you come at the king, you best not miss. Splendor is so good at what it's doing. It is why we joke about wanting to find the Splendor killer, in the same ways I will talk about Resistance as the social deduction game to beat. That said, I think Coloretto is the same thing applied to an even simpler game. It is simplicity defined, in my opinion. So I think Coloretto edges this out for me.
All right. Splendor sticks around, but now it's up against San Juan. I enjoy both these games. I think I enjoy San Juan more as a game, but I think in terms of comfort games, I would go Splendor.
So the one thing here that we didn't get to in these other games that are really short is there is something interesting about a length of time where something happens, right? Where you are taken away from yourself and you're actually only thinking about sort of this process or the game. And so that doesn't happen as often in Coloretto, I will say. I know we're not arguing about that right now, and I love Coloretto. In this case, I think the answer is Splendor, though it pains me, and San Juan has a nostalgic warmth that's emanating from my body, but I have to vote for Splendor. Fire away.
Splendor would have been my pick as well. Fire away.
All right, next up, it's Patchwork versus Scrabble.
Ooh.
I feel too much tension playing Scrabble. I'm going to go Patchwork. Fire away. Words with friends, doesn't matter what it is. I always feel like I got to come up with the word.
It's because you're cheating with the dictionary. Scrabble, fire away. I enjoy Patchwork, not enough. I gave it away. I was tempted to pick up the Christmas edition, but then I found out it's not shipping till Q1 2021.
That seems absurd.
I think you've missed the window, guys.
Like I said when Scrabble came up, I think that this feels like a huge omission. This is such a nostalgia pick for me, and one that I still play regularly, actually. Like, I play Words with Friends like almost every other week with my mom. So, Scrabble, fire away.
Wow, going against your own.
Yeah, no, that feels like an omission from my list, frankly.
That's cool. Next up, Patchwork sticks around, but this time it's against Dominion. I'm going to go Patchwork on this one. Fire away.
It's tough, right? The theme of Patchwork is doing all of the work.
No, it's not.
Right?
It's
You got
doing
your
some of
comfy
the
little...
work.
Yes, it is. It's doing all the work. Who even likes
Who
polynomials?
doesn't like polyominoes?
Dominion, fire away.
It's Patchwork, the warm, quilty comfort.
Yeah. Okay, tell us something that's not the theme, bro.
All right. Here we go. Dominion sticks around, but now it's up against Sushi Go. Sushi Go for me.
Dominion for me.
It's more brown, the cards. Dominion, fire away.
All right, Sushi Go versus...
Sushi Go is not good, right?
No, disagree. Wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
But are you sure?
I'm positive. I've checked. I've mathematically checked it, and you are wrong. Next up, Sushi Go sticks around, but this time against Lost Cities. These are both my picks, but I'm going to go Sushi Go because no tension zone.
Yeah, I think it's Sushi Go for me as well.
Kellen, doesn't matter what you say, but you can say.
Oh, so don't stop humming and hawing over there. We're moving on.
All right, Lost Cities versus Telestrations.
Lost Cities.
Telestrations, fire away.
Lost Cities. See, I don't do a kneeling and go against my own picks. Coloretto versus the game.
Coloretto.
Coloretto, fire
All right,
away.
I am like kneeling. I go against my own picks. Coloretto, far away.
Don't come at the King Gecko. You better not miss.
The game versus Splendor.
It's very interesting to me. I wonder how much nostalgia plays into this because the game is newer. And so I don't have the nostalgia of playing it. But I see myself camping as like a 12-year-old and I could see myself playing the game and it working like perfectly in this context. So maybe in another 10 years I'll have the comfort with the game. But until then, I choose the other game that I can't remember the name of right now. I choose Splendor. Fire away.
This is close for me, but I think for this, it just comes down to what I would rather play more now. I don't know. That's just my gut feeling now, and for me, it's the game, but it's close.
I think I'm going to agree with you there, Mark. There is something about, again, it being a cooperative game and it feeling like a game that I've played recently and enjoyed recently. I love Splendor, but I think the game edges it for me in this category.
All right, the game wins. Splendor sticks around, but it's going to go down because it's going up against Biblios.
Splendor, fire away.
Come on, Splendor, fire away.
For the record, I vote for Biblios. And Biblios...
You're not allowed to talk. What happened to the no talking problem?
I'm hosting. No rules apply to me. San Juan versus Biblios.
If San Juan ends up at the bottom of this list, so
I like
Biblios
I like
can have
San Juan.
like 12th place.
I like San Juan. I do. But I just feel so good playing Biblios. I just feel so good. It's Biblios for me.
Again, I've not
He's
played
not
someone.
San Juan.
So what is he going to vote for?
How do I
He
vote
can't
on
vote.
this?
Okay.
San Juan, fire away.
No,
he
he
votes
but
San Juan.
Biblios. Biblios is a great game.
Vote.
Fire away.
Yep. The record shows Biblios beat San Juan. San Juan versus Wizard.
Oh my god. You guys are putting all my games at the bottom.
This is just how it comes out. I genuinely enjoy San Juan a lot. I'm going to go San Juan in this one.
It's Wizard, fire
Wizard,
away.
fire away.
All right. Coloretto versus Scrabble. Coloretto easy for me here.
I think it's Coloretto for me as well.
I shall not speak.
All right.
I am not the host, and I have already had 2 votes cast.
Scrabble versus the game. The game
Scrabble,
for me.
fire away.
See, I think this is where I'm talking about. Like, a round of the game is so short, and Scrabble is like a 2-hour, like, comfort fest where, you know, it's 8 p.m. and your mom is like, let's play Scrabble. You know what I mean?
Just out of curiosity, you guys don't feel like a competitive tension playing Scrabble? Maybe because you've played it a number. I mean, I've played it a lot too, but
I already previously revealed that I cheated at my childhood Scrabble tournament so
that's
that I
right.
could win.
That's right.
So I definitely feel it. I feel it, but oof. Scrabble, fire away.
Okay. The game versus Patchwork. All right, Kellen. Let's do it. The game.
Yeah, it's got to be the game,
Patchwork.
fire away.
Neil, you can't talk.
But it can't be the game with the like skull
Right.
theme and
No,
the
no.
black
Whatever
cards.
one you're
It's
going to vote for
Quanchai.
is the one it is, Kellen.
It has to be Quanchai Moria.
That's the one it is then.
Okay.
Okay. Splendor versus Patchwork.
Patchwork.
It's easily Splendor.
I think I go
Nealon as sees the
It's not just about
quilt,
the quilt.
and he's like
No.
lost his mind. It's not about being warm,
There's a
Nealon.
satisfaction of polyominographs, like finding the perfect piece and you put it into the perfect spot and you're just like,
All right, well, I voted
Ah.
Splendor.
In a room.
Splendor,
Get
Splendor.
back to back.
Splendor,
Get out your
Splendor.
50-piece puzzle.
All right, Splendor wins. All right, Kellen, we just pushed Splendor through against Patchwork. Let's do the same thing for Biblios.
versus
All right,
Patchwork?
well, for me, yes.
Patchwork.
Kellen. They released the Christmas one in Q1,
Kellen,
as you
get
said.
over your quilt hang up.
Is there a Biblios Christmas edition?
There is.
There is not a Biblios because
Okay, it's not technically a Christmas edition. It's technically a Pokemon edition.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can I be real, Mark?
Yes.
I still think you're kind of joking about Biblios.
I'm not joking
Like,
about
I think we should have a night where we sort of share stories, about our lives. We sort of, I don't know, have glasses of wine, and then we play like 3 games of Biblios back to back while you sort of tell me about why what we're doing is fun.
Let's Patreon exclusive. Let's do it.
Because I'm not convinced Patchwork Fire Away. And I'm actually, I know I'm not joking either.
That's
fine. I don't like wine, so that part's a joke.
That's fine. I've said this before. When we were doing our top 50 list last year, I had that same feeling. Like, wait, is this a bit that I'm doing to myself? Like
Yes.
this Biblios thing? And then I was doing the rankings, and I'm like, I would actually definitely rather play Biblios than any of these games, for sure. So it is not a bit. And again, scientifically proven.
I'm actually surprised that
using
we've not
PubMed.
done Biblios as like at least a 3-player because I think we would enjoy it a lot despite Kellen's
Yes.
I
misgivings.
think even Dr. Finn is confused at this point.
That's fine. Speaking of Biblios, it sticks around and it's up against Dominion. I don't feel good about its chances.
Dominion,
Minion
fire
Fire
away.
Away.
All right. Biblios sticks around further, and now it's going up against Sushi Go. So Kellen can slam both of them simultaneously.
Dominion Fire. What am I slamming? Dominion
No,
Fire Away.
Biblios.
No, Biblios versus Sushi Go. He doesn't. He rejects the premise.
Biblios versus Sushi Go?
Yeah.
No, Biblios is better than Sushi Go.
right, thank
Biblios.
you.
Fire Away.
Biblios, fire away.
I'll vote last, so all 3 counts. Biblios. Wizard versus Sushi Go. Sushi Go for sure.
Wizard.
Nealon,
Sushi
you
Go,
are with me
fire
on
away.
this one. Yes. Okay. Wizard versus Lost Cities. This is tricky. I will admit this is tricky, but for me, it's still Lost Cities.
I think it's still. I think it's still
Fire
Lost
away.
Cities for me. Fire away.
Okay.
But that doesn't even make sense.
It does
What
make
doesn't
sense
make
because it counts.
No, it doesn't. You guys are not people of culture.
Wizard versus Telestrations.
Telestrations is my
Yeah.
pick.
I actually feel bad because I feel like if I played Wizard more, I might vote for it. But as it stands,
That's the premise here, right? If you haven't played it enough, you kind of only can vote for the other one. Like Wizard is literally in the top 5 best answers to this question. Like that's a fact. Okay.
and yet it keeps dropping down.
I've done the math.
Oh,
I've done
we're
the
done.
math.
We're done. All right,
We need to
you've done the
recount
math,
the votes
and we
stop the counting.
You've done the math, and yet we've done the math also because the list is done.
Stop the counting.
At the bottom, San Juan. So that's 1 at the bottom for Kellen. Number 11 is Wizard. Number 10, Telestrations. Number 9, Lost Cities. Number 8, Sushi Go. Number 7, and quite respectable, I will say, all things considered, Biblios. Number 6, Dominion. Number 5, Patchwork. Number 4, Splendor. Number 3, this is a surprise to me, and I put it on there, the game. Number 2, Scrabble. And then number 1, I don't think it lost a single battle, Coloretto.
Nice.
That is our BGBOB games of comfort, our comfort games. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? What do you think about Biblios finishing in 7th, above Wizard,
higher
above
than it
San Juan?
deserved. I couldn't be more thrilled with the 1 and 2 picks. Like as a surprise entry, at least for me, like I think Scrabble deserves that. It would probably be the number 2 spot on my revised list if I were to think about it.
I mean, I believe you, like the same way I believe like Kellen's argument for Wizard, but I just, for Scrabble, it's just, I feel like it's such a nerve-wracking game. I just
Yeah, I
do
don't
not
know.
equate it with a comfort game.
I don't know. I guess I don't feel that as much about it. And what's funny is that like I can almost see exactly why you're saying what you're saying, but because it just occupies this specific space in my brain, I can't associate tension with it.
It almost feels like a challenge to your intelligence, like playing Scrabble. Like, who knows words better? I mean, I know it's not that, but it's almost that. It's almost like a declaration of who has a better vocabulary.
You guys are trying to steal this election from me. Fraudulent votes. Wizard is way better than this list would suggest.
Wizard already won.
I love that. That's right. If we counted all legal votes, Wizard would be number one, that's for sure.
If you would have stopped the counting when I said so.
That's going to do it for our show. Go to BoardGameBarrage.com/Discord. Go to the podcast channel right now and let us know what your most comforting game is. And let us know what you think about our list. You can find us on all forms of social media, as always, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. Go to BoardGameBarrage.com and go to the website and find links to all our other stuff. BoardGameBarrage.com/trade is where you can find our perpetual math trade. So if you're ever hankering for a math trade, you can always go to BoardGameBarrage.com/trade, and there is a new trade for you to join. Thank you, as always, to Heart Society for our intro and outro song, What's on Your Mind, Kid? And that is going to do it. Stay comfortable, everybody. See you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So, as I was saying about the McFlurries, an enterprising, young, well, I don't know how young he is, engineer knew about the plight of the McFlurry machine always being down, right?
Right.
And so what you can actually do is you can try to order in the McDonald's app to see if a McFlurry is available. And if the machine is down, it will be grayed out, so you can't order it. So he wrote a bot that every 20 minutes orders $18,000 worth of McFlurries across the United States and updates a map in real time so you can go to his website to check if McFlurries are available.
Hilarious. Oh, my God. That's great. I love that.
What a smart young man.
That's right. He's going places.
That man's name, Ronald McDonald.
Kellen Allen.
No, yeah, I don't know how to build that bot. You think I programmed Ghost Turkey?
Just in the pay your opponent a resource when you go on their spot. I mean, it's not a highly interactive game. It is just not.
You know what you could do?
What is that?
You could go into a room with someone else and face away from each other,
Yeah.
so that you're not looking at each other.
Yeah.
And then you could each do a 50-point puzzle with one hand.
It's like you were so close to having a bit that could make it onto the podcast.
I call that Sunday night. Anyway.
Oh, Christina's not happy.
Well, tell her I'm definitely keeping it in, though.
It's a children's show? Oh, no, they said they won't put it in.
All right, here we are. Who's that knocking on the door? Nealon, can you go answer the door? Do sound effects.
No, it's
Little boy.
Come on.
What's
sound
one.
effects?
Yeah, just for once, Helen.
That's good. What do you mean? Good like the little boy?
Go boop, 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 little boy. What the hell is that?
That was... He wanted to come in. I don't understand.
Oh, my God. Okay. Oh, I don't know.
If
how to do
only you
that, but we're
could channel this gold into broadcastable material.
I know, exactly.
What do you mean? There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay. That's for the outro. Take two. All right. Who's that at the door? Nealon, go get it. Kellen sound effects. No, you're Kellen sound effects guy.
What?
Nealon is the lingual guy, the
Yeah.
multilingual guy, and Kellen is the sound effects man. So here we go. Nealon, go get that door.
Okay.
Kellen. That sounds
Oh, wait,
slide thing.
am I answering the door? What am I?
You're doing the whole
No, you're doing the sound effects to the door. Yeah, you're going like stepping to the door and then creak. Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Boop, boop. Oh, because I did other sound effects.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Exactly.
saying. You're the sound effects
The sound
man.
effects
Oh,
guy.
people liked it.
People liked
Did
it.
anyone
People
say
identify
anything?
you. Yeah, everybody loved
Everyone.
it. Everybody
We've
loved
had
it.
nonstop
We got so many reviews. That's right. That's right. All right, take three. Who's at the door? Take four. Who's at the door? Nealon. Take five. Who's at the door? Nealon, go get it.
Okay.
Kellen, sound effects.
What's this?
Stepping, open the door. It's very
I don't
simple.
get it.
Instead of
Is Nealon going to the
Yes,
door?
Nealon
Is
to
he
get the
opening
door.
the door?
He's going to the door
Oh,
with an open door.
someone's at the
Yeah.
door. Is it the Kool-Aid Man?
No, it's BGBBOB. That's the whole thing.
Okay.
Okay, take 6.
No, we're done.
No, we're not done. We're doing this.
I don't know how.
Who's that
I'm
door?
very uncomfortable.
Who's that door? Nealon, go get it.
Okay.
Kellen, sound effects.
I'm not. I don't know how to do this. I don't understand.
All right, forget it.